Roll for initiative, baby, because Tig Asmussen is trading in lightsabers for longswords. After guiding us through Jedi mind tricks, lightsaber parries, and I guess more daddy issues than an entire season of Clone Wars, the director behind one of my favourite games, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and of course Survivor, he's now stepping into a whole new kind of fantasy. And this time, there's no force powers, just fireballs, dungeon maps, and at least one chaotic neutral rogue trying to seduce a tavern NPC. Tig and his freshly minted studio, Giant Skull, which honestly it sounds like a D&D boss and like a metal band combined, they've finally lifted the lid on their next big adventure, which is going to be a D&D game. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons, critical hits, gelatinous cubes, dice rolls that ruin friendships are all coming our way. After more than a year of working in secret, the deal with Hasbro is now official. It's like plane shifting, beholder staring, bard looting the room official. And Tig, he can finally exhale. No more NDA level silence, no more dodging questions like a dexterity-based monk. The project's real, the studio is ready, and if his Jedi games were anything to go by, we are in for something that kind of blends cinematic storytelling with enough action to make your paladin's head spin and smite at the same time. But what can we expect, right? So from what I'm reading, will it be Baldur's Gate with a budget the size of like a dragon's horde, or a narrative-heavy epic with branching choices and that signature like Respawnish combat flow, but with magic missiles instead of blasters? One thing is for sure, the party's been assembled, the dice are on the table, and Giant Skull has just cast major hype. So I've done some research and I'm going to present this to you with everything we kind of know so far. It's dangerous to go this alone, right? So Tig Asmussen, he founded a studio and he took the entire dev party with him. It's fresh off the digital stage. So at the Summer Games Fest 2025, Tig Asmussen, he sat down with Polygon and he let out what can only be described as a developer's version of a long exhausted force exhale. So yeah, it's a big deal. Asmussen, he isn't just some random dev rolling for a charisma check in a crowded genre. This guy, he directed God of War 3. He helped, in my opinion, redefine Star Wars games with Fallen Order and Survivor. I have a whole video ranting about it. I'll pop it at the end. But now he's challenging all that storytelling, that combat expertise, and that cinematic flair into Dungeons and Dragons running on Unreal Engine 5. So in other words, imagine Kratos with a longsword, Cal Kestis in chainmail, and the camera work of The Last of Us meets Game of Thrones, minus the last 2 seasons. We don't talk about those, it's like Fight Club. But when word hit last year that Asmussen was leaving Respawn to form Giant Skull, fans, we collectively, I guess, raised our eyebrows like Spock hearing someone question his logic. This new studio, it focused on a single-player, narrative-driven, action-based D&D game. It's basically like gamer catnip for anyone who still quotes, well, like The Princess Bride and owns at least one dice bag that's shaped like a mimic. And Giant Skull, it didn't come to play, it came to crit. So with a name like that, like I said, it just sounds like a death metal album cover or like the final boss in Castlevania. And their mission, it was clear from like day one. No live service fluff, no loot box nonsense, just pure, high quality, story heavy, controller gripping goodness. So now the quest has officially begun. The real question, I guess, is kind of like, what kind of D&D adventure are we in for? Is it going to be dark and brooding like The Witcher 3? Is it going to be whimsical with the emotional gut punches of like Dragon Age Origins? Or is it going to, like, I guess, carve its own path entirely? A cinematic beast that kind of bridges the worlds of storytelling and systems like few before it. Roll credits on Fate, because this team-up's been in the works since Kratos had a full head of rage-fueled hair. So spearheading the deal on Hasbro's side was none other, obviously, than Wizards of the Coast president John Haidt, a name that might not shoot lightning bolts from the sky, but in game dev circles, he's basically the Gandalf of production. He's got serious history with Tig Asmussen. We're talking deep lore-level connections connections here, like flashback episode from season 2 kind of stuff. Their alliance, it goes all the way back to like mid-2000s when Haidt, he strolled into Sony, had stints at like EA and Atari, because the video game equivalent of doing a multi-class prestige build is basically his vibe. So around 2006, from my research, he crossed paths with a young, fire-eyed Asmussen who was busy slapping together the original God of War, and from there, bromance mode activated. Imagine going to the pub with these guys, right? The conversations would be big. By the time God of War 3 was in production, Haidt was overseeing it, and the two were shaping one of PlayStation's probably most iconic mythical face melters together. Haidt eventually moved to Blizzard in 2011, and then working on the World of Warcraft and Diablo 3. What a grind that was. As you do when you're building a resume designed to make RPG nerds just weep. Fast forward to last year. Haidt lands at Wizards of the Coast, aka the guys who hold the keys to Dungeons and Dragons' kingdom, albeit controversially at the moment. 4 months later, it's December, and the bat signal goes up, and he calls Asmussen, like he's assembling the Avengers. So, hi, this is me on the phone. What's Giant Skull got cooking? What's going on there? Spoiler alert, they weren't cooking mac and cheese. From there, the stars aligned, the dice were rolled, and the decades of shared creative chemistry, it finally paid off. It's like a full circle moment that you don't kind of see outside of sports documentaries and Marvel post-credit scenes. With this kind of history and mutual respect behind the scenes, you get the sense that this D&D game isn't just a license grab, it is a passion project. The kind of epic that happens when two longtime collaborators and friends finally get to build their world their way. So yeah, this party's formed, the studio's locked in, and somewhere in the shadows, a beholder is watching or waiting. See, after years of building inside the immovable lore monolith that is Star Wars, Asmussen was ready to stretch his narrative legs. You can tell he's still got love for the galaxy far, far away, but let's be honest, I guess when you're working with Lucasfilm, you don't get a story Bible. You get the whole encyclopedia with like laser arms and an editor and Jedi robes breathing over your shoulder like Vader. D&D, by contrast, it's an open world fever dream built on imagination, improvisation, and just enough chaos to make every session one bad dice roll away from a TPK. It's a franchise where the only canon is don't be boring. And that is music to the ears of a director like Tig. After a visit to Wizards HQ in February, Asmussen, he came away with one key realization. This wasn't just a brand. I guess it was a canvas, like one that could shift from dark and brooding to light and whimsical. And as he put it, to quote, "A brilliant world that can be dark, but it also can be whimsical and have levity to it." A translation, essentially 1 minute you're slaying a lich and then the next you're bartering with a talking goose. There's no strict formula to what a D&D game has to be. Sure, Baldur's Gate 3, it looms large in the cultural consciousness. I have done 3 playthroughs. It's basically the Elden Ring of CRPGs right now, but Giant Skull isn't here to ride coattails. As Haidt says, here we go, "Don't get me wrong, we are going to do CRPGs that are going to be just as serious as Baldur's Gate 3, but this is something different. It's about letting new voices jump into the sandbox with their own buckets and shovels, because that's what we use in sandboxes, right? It's about letting the devs play Dungeon Master, not just translating rules, but capturing the vibe of a really cool campaign, the kind where anything can happen, where every character has a weird backstory and someone always tries to seduce the dragon. It happens. Being faithful to D&D, it doesn't mean rigid rule set or lore checking every tavern name. It means doing right by the imaginations of the player. And take Asmussen, who's built games where we feel like Jedi and gods. It seems like exactly the kind of DM who'll have us believe again. I'm so excited. Gelatinous cubes, owlbears, mimics, the stuff of dreams and nightmares, and now potentially boss fights with dramatic orchestral music and slow-mo finishes. As John Haidt puts it, we have 50 years of DMs coming together and creating their own campaigns. That's not just history. It's creative, like avalanche. We're talking decades of dungeon crawls, dice rolls, and homebrew monsters scribbled in spiral notebooks beside empty Mountain Dew cans, right? And now that collective imagination is about to be unleashed with this firepower. Height gets it. He knows these monsters aren't just stat blocks. They're icons. The Gelatinous cube isn't just a jelly trap, it's a rite of passage. The owlbear, equal parts terrifying and weirdly huggable from a safe distance. Bringing these creatures to life in a game means more than just good art. It means like meeting or exceeding the expectations of literally millions of players who already know exactly what an owlbear should look like in motion. That's a tall order, but as Height puts it, I think about what Stig and Patrick Murphy did on God of War 3, and there it is. Because if you've ever seen Kratos go full boss fight against a screen-filling mythological beast, if you've felt that thunderous controller shaking weight behind every strike, then you already know what Tig and his team are capable of. Now imagine channeling that energy into Dungeons and Dragons. It's not just fights. Encounters, not just monsters, myths with meat on the bones. It's less press X to win and more press X to cleave a beholder's eye stalk off in a glorious slow-mo brutality. So what exactly did Height see at Giant Skull that made him go all in on a new studio? Precision. Pure, uncut design precision. Even though the D&D game is likely years out, and we're probably looking at like, what, 2027 release maybe, with at least 3 more Skyrim re-releases in between, Giant Skull has already laid the groundwork, a combat and movement system built from the studio's collective experience, fine-tuning action gameplay over the years from Olympus to the Outer Rim. In short, they're not starting from scratch, they're starting from excellence. And that's where this gets exciting, not because it's another D&D game, we've seen those, but because it's a D&D game being built by a team that know how to make every swing, every spell, every step just feel right. It's not just fun, it's bloody legendary. If Giant Skull nails this, we could be looking at the next big epic fantasy. The one that lives in the same hallowed halls of God of War, The Witcher 3, even Elden Ring. And this time, you get to fight an owlbear instead of just modding one into Skyrim. Before the dungeon, before the dragon, before the inevitable betrayal by the rogue, you have to make sure the jump button feels good. Now, while the rest of the world is dreaming up spell systems, alignment charts, and whether or not you can romance a tiefling warlock, Giant Skull is just laser focused on something far more fundamental. The feel, moment-to-moment magic, the thing that separates a great game from a pretty tech demo where your character controls like a shopping cart with a bad wheel. According to John Heights, Giant Skull started at character level. Not lore, not world building, not even how many taverns the bard can get kicked out of. No, step one was making sure just moving through a space feels good. And that kind of polish and intuition, most studios, I don't think they start thinking about it until like 2 years in and the coffee budget's been replaced with like existential dread. But Tig's crew, they're already there. Height even got hands-on with it and walked away impressed, noting that it's like the, what did he say, subtlety of control that's already dialed in, long before the first mimic chest ever opens its mouth. And if you've played God of War 3 or even Jedi Survivor, if you haven't, please do, you know exactly what that means. Weight, precision, and fluidity. The kind of game feel that makes just walking forward feel cool. Of course, if you're looking for hot scoops like which spells might make the cut or whether you'll get to play a half-orc bard with daddy issues, slow down. Neither Height nor Asmussen, they weren't ready to roll for details on core mechanics, character classes, or even world specifics. It's way too early for spell lists or plot twists. But the only gameplay information Asmussen gave is wait for it, you can press a button to jump. That's it, that's the scoop. That's all I've got. But if you've played enough modern RPGs where jump is replaced with awkward mantle animation or please find the climbable ledge, then you know that's actually like a pretty exciting promise. But here's the thing, Height loves that they're not rushing. He wants Asmussen and Giant Skull to stay in that early magical stage where anything is possible and nothing's locked down. And as he puts it, he always goes to find the fun first. Because let's be real, too many games, they start by drawing maps, scripting lore, listing features like they're filling out a Kickstarter stretch goal list from like 2013. And then halfway through development, they realise the game feels like controlling a medieval forklift. But Tig, he starts with the real question all great DMs should be asking. what's actually fun. And from there, they'll build everything else, every dungeon, every monster, every chaotic dice roll around that foundation. Because when the controls feel great from frame one, everything else becomes an extension of that joy. So I guess that's kind of summarizes everything we know so far, or everything I've been able to find out. Tig Asmussen and Giant Skull, they are officially rolling initiative on what could be the next great D&D epic. We've got mystery, we've got magic, monsters, movement that actually feels good, and all the important, that's what she said, right? And all the important confirmation that yes, you can jump, which already puts it ahead of half of the fantasy RPGs released in the last decade. It's still early days, and sure, there's no trailer, there's no title, there's not even a single owlbear in sight yet. But if history tells us anything, it's that when Tig Asmussen builds a world, he doesn't just craft a game, he drops you into a full-blown mythos with like cinematic punch and just enough emotional damage to make sure you stare at the credits in silence. And if this whole thing turns out to be a giant like bait and switch, and the game's actually about a sentient mimic trying to open a small business in Waterdeep, I'd still play it. Anyway, if you made it this far, I'm going to implore you one time to do all those things you need to do to please support my tiny channel. All of those things, because I do genuinely love you so much. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'll see you in the next video.